Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. My guest today is the host of Australian yarn show, Kat Sullivan. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you just had that festival. It was March of this year. I saw glimpses of it on Instagram. It looked super excited. What's interesting about your show, what I found interesting, it's sort of like a combination of trade show and the consumer show, because you have classes where you teach the industry professionals about branding and this stuff, but there's also classes for people who just come to the festival. There's obviously marketplace with beautiful yarn and all these things. So it looked like a very difficult thing to prepare because you have to sort of prepare it for both consumers and retailers. Before we go into, and we're going to go into details of how you're preparing for something like this, tell me a little bit like your backstory. How did you find yourself organizing the festival?
Yeah, look, there's so many little things that happen in life that lead to something as big as the Australian Yarn Show. I've worked in professional roles for a long time in professional industries that have strong industry bodies that support the businesses in them. And my background is primarily in sustainability and supporting small businesses and understanding sustainability. I've been knitting since I was 4. My mum taught me how to knit, and she's one of my biggest supporters in the business, as alongside my dad, who many met at the yarn show. And in 2019, I unfortunately suffered a series of 3 strokes and lost the use of the left side of my body. Mostly, I also had some right side effectiveness throughout that. And one of the uh, craft that I turned to was knitting. I used that as a way to develop my fine motor skills after something so difficult as having strokes. And knitting became such a big part of my recovery. I'd always knit, but I'd pick it up for, a week or two and then put it down for a couple of months. Whereas knitting really strongly entered my life in 2019. And I just became yarn obsessed, as many of us are. And it was from there that I started really researching different recycled yarns, eco yarns, because of my background in sustainability. And I was really interested to see what different people were doing with different fibers. So in 2020, after I had brain surgery to remove a tumor that had been causing a lot of the issues, I decided to start a yarn business because I'd spent all this time where I couldn't do much other than knit and research, uh, finding out all about these amazing products. And I really wanted to bring them to Australians, especially where we are in Canberra on Ngunnawal and Ngambri land. We are very eco-conscious here. Um, Canberra is a very environmentally focused city, and a lot of the people in my knitting and crochet group I thought would really be interested in some of these fibers that I found. So we started Fancy Yarns Australia, which is our product-based business, and we started bringing in yarn from all around the world using fibers like eucalyptus, banana, hemp, seaweed, sugarcane, and the business really took off. So we started doing a lot of community yarn shows all around the east coast of Australia, which is where Canberra is. I know everyone seems to know Melbourne and Sydney. Canberra's not too far away, sort of 3 hours drive from Sydney. And we were doing all these different yarn shows, but what we were feeling like was missing, having that background in professional industries, was a conference that supported the growth of the industry beyond just showcasing our products to those that were already engaged in yarn crafts. And to have a industry body or a supporting organization that was really invested in how can we move the Australian yarn industry forward. I think we have some of the best wool in the world that's grown in Australia, and we are facing some challenges, which I'm sure we'll get into throughout the conversation today. But we needed some way to fix that. especially for yarn crafters. And my husband and I turned to each other one day while we were at a show. I don't think we were married at that point. Maybe we were. And said, we should do something. We should organize a conference. We have so many talented makers, business owners, ideal driven people who should be able to showcase their work on a national stage. So let's build the stage. So we were late to have our honeymoon because of COVID. But during our honeymoon, we had this beautiful room I had to go to a conference in Thailand. And so we tacked our honeymoon on the back of that. And we had this beautiful room overlooking the ocean in Thailand. And my husband said, we could go to by the pool, we could do this, we could do that. I said, I just want to lock ourselves in this room, this beautiful ocean view, and write what the Australian Yarn Show is going to be and make it happen. So the Australian Yarn Show is
What better way
actually
to spend your honeymoon? I mean, seriously.
I know there's a photo of me that my husband took, and I'll make sure I send these to you. There's a photo of me that my husband took on the second day of our honeymoon after he'd made me try and relax for a day, which I don't do well. And I'm so angrily crocheting on the balcony. And I have this most sour look on my face. And then there's a photo that he took of me after we'd done that full day of work and planning. And, there was a lot more than just one day of planning, but the big day where we got all the ideas out onto the table and into some form of an organized agenda. And I'm just so relaxed and happy and in my element. And you can see from that photo that was the moment that I was really calm and relaxed.
Well, let's talk about John for a second, because he's a fiber artist in his own right?
Yes, yeah. So when I first met my husband, he was a bit of what we call a rev head in Australia. I don't know if it's a similar term that's used around the world, but loves his cars, loves fast cars, loves talking about cars, knows a lot more about cars than I think anyone needs to know unless they're a qualified mechanic. And he also is really into building gaming computers. So neither of those hobbies scream fiber artist. But we have these birds in Australia called magpies, and they love shiny objects. And John can be a bit of a magpie sometimes. He sees something shiny and he gets really excited. So when we started bringing in these beautiful yarns, and we have a lot of sparkly yarns in our store, he just started to fall in love with all the different colors and fibers and textures. And I tried teaching him to knit, and he's a very, very good knitter, but he doesn't enjoy it. I tried teaching him to crochet, and that one didn't take very well. But then he met someone at one of the festivals who was actually a teacher at the yarn show this year, Francie Goody, and she is a weaver. And he just thought it was absolutely amazing that it was just sort of one action back and forward, very easy, very relaxed, and you can create something as beautiful as a woven piece. So I bought him his first loom, and he's been weaving ever since. So he has created some really beautiful and just quite unique scarves. He's stuck mostly with scarves at the moment, but he's really looking to branch out into other things as he gets his confidence up. But he's very, very good at color combinations and working out how things will look, probably better than I am. So yeah, it's fantastic that he's embraced it. And he was actually the moderator of the Men in Yarn panel at the Australian Yarn Show, which talked about how to encourage more men into fiber crafts and make it a safe space for men to participate. And some of they spoke very vulnerably about some of the bullying and the mental health challenges and discrimination of not necessarily owning a business in the industry, but also just partaking in the craft, and how we can reduce some of that stigma for future generations of boys. Like, we've got a 2.5-year-old son, and we'd love for him to be involved in yarn crafts.
When you first decided to open the store, did you have a clear business plan? Did you know what yarns you're going to bring into the store, what you're going to show your customers there, or was it also like sort of natural evolution?
It was a little bit of both. We did have the strong vision of recycled eco novelty yarns. And we talk about that a lot in our business, that's where we specialize. But it did start to develop over time, especially as more innovation is happening in the textile space. And we're starting to see more yarn producers play with fibers like seaweed and sugarcane and eucalyptus, and they're becoming more and more easily accessible, and just beautiful to use. Like I love using them. And then we started to see that a few Australian dyers were having to do the dyeing of the yarn plus the shows plus all their online orders, plus their advents. And it was a lot of work that was happening. So the first dyer that we got on was Marie from Obsession Yarns, who's also based here in Canberra. She was one of the sponsors of the show this year too. Because she was having to dye the yarn for all these festivals, go around to all the festivals, and then come home and dye the yarn for her online orders. And it was just a lot of work, and still is. And so we said, hey, look, we're happy to actually take some of your yarn with us because we're doing all the festivals. We don't have to dye the yarn because the biggest part of our business is doing the research into the fibers and then bringing them in from all the different places that are producing the eco yarns. So how about you just focus on the dyeing and let us take some of your yarn with us? And so that was our first engagement with an Australian based dyer. And since then, we've increased and we're working with Maximu from the Mornington Peninsula. And we're really excited to be stocking Great Southern Yarn at the end of April as well. So that evolution's happened quite naturally as we started doing the shows and started to see some of the challenges, especially for someone like Max, who's based on the Mornington Peninsula. It's a fair way to travel to get to a show in New South Wales, especially, just north of Sydney. For those who understand Australian geography, it's a hard task for a yarn dyer. So if we can do that and showcase his products in another show, that's a fantastic way for him to get more exposure. And it means that we can sell a product that we really believe in as well. Max was actually the first yarn that John ever wove in. So he was really excited to support another man in the yarn craft industry too.
Well, when I was looking at your list of yarns, I was really blown away with the variety of your recycled yarns and things that like I never even knew that they can be turned into the yarn, like plastic bottles, water bottles, or recycled jeans. So you have sari, recycled saris, and I mean there is all this banana hemp and like all the seaweed and all these interesting yarns. Do you get excited when you discover some new material that's been recycled into yarn?
Yeah, I get really excited. I actually usually see it come out in like a non-craft yarn first. So we first fell in love with eucalyptus because we ordered in eucalyptus sheets for our bed. Because there were quite a few like antibacterial properties, absorbing 50% more moisture than cotton. They've got both a cooling effect in summer, but a warming effect in winter. And as much as Australia is known for being hot, it does get quite cold in Canberra, in the winter time at least. So I tend to find fibers, especially in my work as a sustainability consultant, that are already being used in products, but not necessarily in yarn for yarn craft. And then, so when I see that transition happen and it being brought into the world of yarn, that's when I get really, really, really excited because I often know a lot about the fiber and have done a lot of research into it. So there's quite a few that I would love to see the yarn industry embrace, and become a little bit more mainstream. Like we're struggling to find in our own store a consistent and large scale supply of whey protein yarn, so yarn from milk. And rose yarn is the other one that we're struggling to find a consistent large scale supply of. So yarn spun from rose fibers, as in the flower. So sometimes I have to break it down. I remember actually I went to Italy last year for another work conference, and my family's in the north of Italy, and I went to visit them. And I've actually got it with me, this beautiful scarf that my husband wove, John, and it's done in a cotton bamboo seaweed blend. And I showed it to my cousin, and my Italian's somewhat limited. And I was saying, in Italian, John made this out of alga marina, which is the word for seaweed. And she was looking at me and she said, lana, which is the word for wool. And I said, no, 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 alga marina. And she's looking at me thinking, this girl doesn't understand any Italian. She's saying, alpaca. And I said, no, no, Tamara, alga marina. And she was just looking at me very confused. And I said, in Italian, John made this con sushi. And she's, sushi, alga marina. And then that's when it all clicked. So it's one of my favorite stories about explaining some of our fibers to people, having to tell my Italian cousin, John made this out of a sushi roll, because that was the only way she was going to understand me.
So when you decided to do this yarn festival, was it immediate idea that it's going to be for both retail customers and also to support the industry?
Yeah, I was always passionate about supporting small businesses ever since I was a child. My parents come from a small business background, and so whatever I can do to help support small Australian businesses, I put my hand up and let's make it happen. And when John and I were planning out the show, we, as business owners ourselves, really wanted to see where there could be more support. So, for example, we took on a coach the end of 2023, and that was a huge investment for us at the time, to have someone come into our business in that capacity and help us see things that we couldn't see ourselves. And it's not an investment that every small business can make. I don't even think we could really do it at the time. I remember there was 1 month where we couldn't pay our coach for a couple of weeks because we had a cash flow issue. But how much that's paid off for us in our business has been phenomenal. And we just wanted a way where we could bring people in to help, just even for a day or half a day, and get some expert advice, expert opinion, provide a space for networking. And this year we held the first industry roundtable. So we brought up some of the key issues in our industry and spoke through what they might look like. And I think being able to offer, the coach that we had, for example, she came as the industry facilitator this year, and being able to offer at sort of half the price that we pay per month to our stall holders, and be able to say, look, you can get a half day with this person. She's going to transform your business. And everyone walked away with such fantastic feedback about Jemima, and the work that she did during that time for them. So yeah, that was phenomenal. And then I guess the other part of the industry that we spoke about doing last year, but wanted to cut our teeth first and then jump into it this year, was holding an industry awards. So Fancy Yarns has been, say, lucky enough. It's been a lot of hard work. So I don't know how much it comes down to luck. It's been a lot of hard work, but we've been a winner of 2 business awards. So we won Retail Business of the Year, which was an international award last year. And then we also won Local Business of the Year for Arts, Crafts and Gifts. And that was in the Canberra area. And we wanted to be able to pay that forward to other young businesses that might not have the confidence to compete in some of those international and local or national business awards. So we created the Australian Yarn Awards. And the difference with the Yarn Awards is that we were able to really set up the criteria to focus most on what our industry needs, which is more collaboration, a focus on sustainability, a focus on diversity and inclusion. And so we wrote out the criteria. We got an independent panel of judges, because if I was judging, everyone would have won. and had these business experts from all different areas of, financial planning, and financial management, to leadership development and coaching, PR. A whole lot of different industries come together and actually read through all of the applications, and they decided three finalists and a winner out of that. So that was really exciting this year, and I think that made a big impact as well on the industry, being able to put these businesses on a stage and say, we recognize you, we see the work that you're doing, and we know that you're making a contribution not only to the yarn industry, but to the broader Australian community. The winner of the Industry Leader of the Year award was Karina Moore of Louie and Lola Yarns. And she's run the Knit for the Girls campaign here in Australia, and she's raised over 120,000 Australian dollars for breast cancer research with the National Breast Cancer Foundation. So, and that's all through yarn, that she's done that. She's brought yarn crafters together, yarn producers, pattern designers, notions makers, and by coordinating that, she's had an impact that's gone beyond the yarn community. And that's something that the judges wanted to recognise. And so she was the very first ever Australian Yarn Industry Leader of the Year, which was fantastic. And Shelley Husband, who I'm sure you would have met at some point.
She was on my channel. We've met at
Yeah.
meeting live. Yes.
Yes.
I was so happy for her that she won.
Yeah, so she won Crochet Designer of the Year, and then she was also runner-up for the Industry Leader of the Year, because she's phenomenal, a very inspirational woman. So, yeah, that was fantastic to be able to do that. And I think for us to take that approach of B2B and B2C, we know as a small business, it's a big commitment to just go to a conference that's B2B and know that you're not going to make any money out of it. So for us to be able to run just one day that's focused on that B2B, business to business environment, and then have another 2 days that is business to customer or B2C, that then allowed all the businesses to come, know that they could invest one day in their own professional development, including networking, taking a little bit of time with their stall set up and speaking to other people in the room, going to that workshop, attending the awards, and then the next 2 days they could really focus on making the money back that they've invested into their business. So that's why for us it was really important to have both, because every single business in that room at the Australian Yarn Show was either a small or family run business. There were no big corporates or big businesses that were in there. It was all small businesses that a lot of them actually started during COVID or not long after. So not all of them have been around for a while. And a majority, I might be wrong, I'd have to double check, but I believe that if they weren't a family run business, if they were just owned by a sole operator, all bar one were women owned. And we know that 97% of female-led startups fail within the first few years. So we really want to keep pushing to make sure that these businesses survive and they don't become one of those stats.
And I think it's a very clever approach to combine the two shows, right? To combine the business to business and business to consumer, because you're right, like for people to come to just business to business, it's pure investment without making money, but to combine both, it actually helps both ways. When I talk about preparation for Yarn Festival, with Yarn Festival organizers, it usually starts the day after the previous festival ended. Are you already thinking about 2026?
It starts before the festival. And I feel like the last 2 weeks of the Yarn Show, we were doing so much work. The last 2 weeks before the Yarn Show 2025, we were starting to work on 2026. And even some of the conversations that we were having with, for example, our videographer who was there, and we actually got him into crocheting after the weekend. So he came for the first year to the show just to do corporate video shoot. And now he came to drop off the videos the other day and was sitting there with the USB. I'll give you this, but I need to ask you about when you do a magic circle, which was really adorable. He's fantastic. but when we were talking with him and we booked him in to do the video shoot, we were talking about, okay, here's the kind of content we need to create because we need to use this as our advertising for 2026 because we really want to get more people from overseas coming to the show, and being able to experience the incredible beauty of Australian yarn. Um, so yeah, we're already starting to have those conversations well before the show even kicks off. And yeah, we've got a few things that we're working on to change a little bit from this year's show, not too much, but we love getting feedback, and we did have quite a bit of um, all so much of our feedback was overwhelmingly positive. There's obviously a couple of negative comments that happen because not everyone's your ideal target market, and that's okay. We're comfortable with that. But then a lot of people were coming up and saying, I love the show. I'm coming back next year. Here's an idea for next year that I think would help. And a lot of it was really constructive. So we take all of that on board. And even if we see comments in our feedback forms that we can't change for whatever reason, we know that we need to address those as an FAQ for next year. So little things like that we're taking into consideration now and starting to work on how we make 2026 even better.
Well, when you talk about the show, can you tell us a little bit about the venue and like the plan of the event? Because I saw there are classes, there are lectures, there are presentations, there are demos, there is a marketplace. So guide us through it a little bit. Give us the visual.
Yeah, there's a lot happening all at once at the show, which is a difficult thing to manage, but luckily we have a great team in place. I'll start with Canberra. So Canberra is Australia's capital city, and we decided to hold the show here because it's a good distance from a lot of places around Australia. So it's easy for businesses in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and Tasmania to get to. When I say easy, it's easier than if a Queensland business had to go down to Melbourne or a Tasmanian business had to go up to Brisbane. We did have a business, Lynn Frankie Artist. She came across from Western Australia, and she does a lot of textile work where she puts yarn onto pieces to create Australian landscape pictures. It's absolutely phenomenal what she does. So she came from Western Australia. So Canberra for us is a fantastic place. It's also known as Australia's meeting place, where people come from all over to meet and to talk and to create decisions for the country. So I thought that would be a fantastic place to hold a yarn show because we also are able to then engage politicians in some of the conversations that we're having as an industry about where we need to do more work, and get some more policy advocacy happening to support the businesses in the yarn industry. Canberra's got so many other attractions as well. So when people come, they can go to the National Gallery, National Portrait Gallery. They can go to the beautiful Parliament House and the marble foyers, the Australian War Memorial, the Australian Botanical Gardens. There's just so much here for people who are visiting the city. So it's a very long answer to your question, but I like to paint a picture of why we chose Canberra as our location as well. Then Hotel Realm is in sort of the heart of the hustle and bustle of politics in Canberra. It's about 5 minutes from Parliament House. It's very close to all of those big attractions like the gallery and the portrait gallery. And it's a 5-star venue. And we really believe that the yarn industry deserves a 5-star venue. Yeah. And I mean, you would have seen some of the videos and photos, but having the beautiful chandeliers in the National Ballroom, and the level of service that Hotel Realm delivered to us was fantastic. Hotel Realm's also part of what's called the Doma Group. So they have a series of hotels that are all within that block. So if your budget isn't a 5-star venue, there's other hotels that are still, 4 or 5 stars, but a lot more affordable to stay at that are all owned by Realm. So they were all aware of the yarn show people coming and were all equally as welcoming to the yarn show people as each other. So we had Burberry, Little National, and the Brassey Hotel all looking after our yarn show attendees and workshop facilitators and store holders. And so it's a really vibrant precinct. There's a beautiful rooftop bar that looks across Canberra. There's a couple of cafes around. There's a restaurant with a bar downstairs. And we had two coffee carts and a pastry cart that was going all day on the yarn show floor. So we take up the whole of the conference level floor. That's all dedicated to us. And then we take up all of the boardrooms as well. So it's definitely a yarn takeover of the hotel. They had people sitting and knitting in the lobby, and it was just a fantastic atmosphere. So the show starts out on the Friday morning. Is we kick off with the industry business building workshop. So this year was around visibility, and it was run by Jemima Ashley, who runs the Visibility Lab. So we kicked off with that, and then we moved into some workshops in the afternoon. So we had needle folding, something called botanical knitting, which is done by an Adelaide artist, Sue Brown, and I've not seen her work being done anywhere else in the world. So if you have the chance to look up botanical knitting by Sue Brown, she does incredible embroidery onto knitted items. And then we also had a crochet workshop and a weaving workshop on the Friday afternoon. All the while that's happening upstairs, the store holders are setting up and they're transforming this empty ballroom into this yarn paradise that will open its doors on Saturday morning. So that happens all Friday. And then we have the industry networking. It kicked off at 6 p.m. this year in the foyer, just outside of the ballroom. And we had a beautiful acoustic guitarist who was singing and doing some live music. And then we had drinks and nibbles all night and the award presentations, obviously. And it was just a fantastic chance for people in the industry to come together and network without having to just say a quick hello before you're setting up, or catch someone as they're packing down their stall at the end of a show. It was dedicated networking time, and we really encourage people to come up with collaborations. So pattern designers to speak to yarn producers to speak to yarn dyers. Have this beautiful connection that we're having in that room, and all these business opportunities to flourish. So that's the end of Friday, and then we start Saturday morning. We had some workshops that kicked off before 9 a.m., but 9 a.m. is when the main doors open, and that's for the market hall. And that was really busy. Next year, we've got to work out how we can better communicate. If you come at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, it is very difficult to move through that room because everyone wants to come and get their first choice of yarn. So we're going to be encouraging a lot more people to come on the Sunday, because it was, not very quiet, but compared to the Saturday morning, it was a lot slower and a lot more manageable to get through and enjoy your yarn shopping time. It didn't feel so manic of, I've got to get this skein before, the sweater quantities of that particular colorway sell out. So Saturday is very busy in the market hall. There's a lot of hustle, there's a lot of bustle. It's got a really exciting, the word I use is a buzz. There's just this hum that's happening in the market hall of people shopping and connecting and learning, which is fantastic. And then we have a community space and a main stage, which are in two separate areas. So the main stage we kicked off this year at 10:15, and we had 16 presentations and 2 competitions that ran on that stage over the 2 days. And so we had people coming in and talking about how different sheep breeds affect how the yarn will work up. And we had some of Australia's best dyers come in and talk about where they get their colour inspiration and how people can match colours. I spoke about the Men in Yarn panel. We had another panel, Paddock Project. So we had 3 yarn producers up on stage talking about how the process happens from growing the sheep or growing the alpacas all the way through to scouring, spinning, and dyeing and selling the yarn. So we talked about that whole process there and talked about some of the challenges that are being faced in Australia, that some of them unique to Australia as well. We had 16 discussions throughout the day. We had 2 competitions, one speed knitting and one speed crocheting. So we had participants have to, for the knitting competition, cast on 20 stitches, do the first row, 'cause the first row is always hard. And then we started the timer and they had 5 minutes to knit as many rows as they could. Um, so that was fantastic. And then we did this similar thing for crochet the next day. We actually had an 11-year-old compete in that, and she came second by, when I say, like, there was a few stitches separating her and the winner. And the winner was really lovely, and she opened up her prize bag and started sharing out some of the items from there because we're so passionate about encouraging young people in craft. Um, and just on that point, I think that's the thing that blows me away about the yarn show is the amount of young people that are walking through those doors. We have so many young crafters that are coming to the show, probably more that I've seen at the Australian Yarn Show than any other show across Australia that we've attended. Um, and then all the while, all of that's happening at the same time, we have a community space and we run clinics that are free for attendees. They don't have to book in like they do for the workshops. The workshops are an additional cost, but just with your entry ticket, you can access the clinics, and we have people sitting there helping troubleshoot. I dropped a stitch here and I'm trying to work out how I can pick it up, or I can't get this yarn over to look right. Can you please help me? Any kind of questions that you might have with your current projects, or something, a technique that you might not be able to understand, or something you don't understand in a pattern, you can bring to the clinics, and they run in that community space. And then all the while that's happening, we're still running workshops in the boardrooms, and they go for between 2 to 4 hours, depending on the topic that's covered. And we had this year workshops on knitting, crocheting, weaving, spinning, needle felting, and embroidery. And they were really well attended. We had, I think, I haven't done all the numbers yet on the show because we're still finalizing a few things, but I think we had about 85% capacity across all those workshops. Some of them sold out in less than 3 hours. Um, so yeah, it was brilliant to see. And then on the Saturday night, we have the community connection dinner. And this year we raised over $500 for Australian dollars for Roundabout Canberra, which is a local charity here that provides essentials to families in need. And we also had an incredible show of support of people actually looking at the basket now, making all these beautiful knitted and crocheted squares for volunteers to sew together into blankets. And so our attendees contributed over 200 blanket squares for families in need. And so that was a fantastic little way that we could engage with the community. And then also meant that we had this great dinner where everyone just came together and chatted. And the reason I love the community connection dinner is some people do travel by themselves and don't really have anyone that they might be a bit shy about making friends on that Saturday. And as I said, it's a bit hectic. So the community connection dinner is a place where they know they're going to be welcomed. They know they're going to find people who have a similar interest to them, which is yarn. And they can come and spend a night before heading back to the show on Sunday and just be around the company of people who are like-minded.
Well, you mentioned the team of people who help you to run the show. Tell me a little bit about them. Like, how do you find the volunteers and what do they do to help you out?
We have a mixture of paid staff and volunteers that we're looking at helping, especially for 2026. We realized that the show's getting a bit bigger. That's probably not something that just two of us can do. So my husband and I do all of the behind the scenes organizing. And then I'm lucky enough to have my parents who are very passionate about supporting us, and they're our sort of sounding board and advisory council. And we go to them with a lot of questions about the show. My dad's done trade shows for 50 years. Oh, it might be pushing it. 40 years. You won't like me saying 50 years. Over 40 years. He's done trade shows all around the world. So he's got a lot of experience in that. So we often have questions and he's always happy to answer. And he was there to greet everyone on the day. And in our feedback forms, someone called him the yarn father, because he was just fantastic. He was so welcoming, so warm. and really supportive of the fiber arts community. Um, and my mum's fantastic. She's someone that prefers to sort of slip into the background a little bit more, but she's always there to answer questions and to provide a perspective. My dad's not a yarn crafter, so she provides the yarn crafter perspective on the show as well. But for the most part, it's John and I doing a lot of the organization, and then also working with our business coach as a sounding board too. On the day, we had a few team members to help welcome people, and a lot of them were actually not yarn crafters, but just really passionate about helping the community, and doing something to support how many people are so um, in love with yarn crafting. They just wanted to be part of the vibe. And so we were really lucky that we had them on our side all weekend. And a few of them have gotten into yarn crafts after the weekend. And so I've got a couple of crochet lessons that I'm going to run to say thank you. But yeah, we've had a huge interest in volunteering for next year. It's hard with getting people who are interested in yarn craft to do the volunteering because we want them to be experiencing the show and enjoying the show. But we have had quite a few people say, we really want to give back to what you guys are doing and let us know how we can help out. So, yeah, we're excited to have a few more people come on board next year, which will allow us then to do some more large scale projects with the show, and deliver even more value to our attendees.
I'm sure like now that the show is behind you, you forget all the little trouble and you are still high from all the good points of it and from all the interactions with the industry professionals and the customers there. Is it nerve-wracking a couple weeks before? Like, are you losing sleep and thinking like what else can go wrong?
I have what I call stress dreams leading up to the show, where they're not nightmares as such, but they're just dreams about everything that could go wrong. And I wake up with this tightness across my chest, thinking, "Oh my goodness!" And sometimes they're really realistic. And there was one morning I woke up and I turned to my husband and I said, "Oh my gosh, you didn't organize anyone to support us on the day. There were no volunteers and the whole show was a disaster." And he's like, "Hold on, we're 2 months out. We're okay. I've sent around messages already. We're fine." And it was just, you know, this overwhelming sense of dread that I woke up with. I clearly remember that morning. But it happens so frequently leading up to the show, is having these stress dreams. And we do have to pull a lot of late nights. We're trying to implement more systems and processes in the organization of the event, so we're not having those late nights anymore. And we did a lot of work this year to build that foundation. And we'll do even more foundation building next year because we're always looking to improve. And once we get a process right, it will just be rinse and repeat as opposed to have to reinvent the wheel every year. So there is a bit of stress. We're really confident in what we deliver, and what our values are, that we know. One thing I've gotten really comfortable with being a business owner, because my husband and I actually run 6 businesses between the two of us. And one thing that we've gotten really, really comfortable with as business owners is knowing that our business is not ideal for everyone, and that's okay. And that's why there is different businesses. There's different yarns for different yarn crafters. There's different yarn festivals for different yarn crafters too. So because we're so confident in what we are delivering for the people that share our values and share our vision, we know that we're going to get the complaints of people that don't buy into the vision or they don't share that. And it's not that our vision's better than theirs, it's just different. And so I think we walk in with that confidence, knowing that we're going to get some negativity, we're going to get some poor feedback, but because we're so true to what we want to deliver, we know we're going to have a great show. And there might be hiccups along the way. I know the 2024 show, the venue just was not right for us. And we were let down a lot by the venue. But we were able to remedy that this year by picking a new venue. And we had communicated that with people up front, saying, we know that this wasn't the right place for us, and we found somewhere that we believe will be. And some of the best feedback we had this year was about how beautiful the venue was and how welcoming all the staff were, and how, if they ran out of tea because everything was happening so quickly that morning, they ran out of Earl Grey tea within less than 10 seconds. It had been they were very, very responsive, which is what we want to see. So um, I don't feel like I have nerves going into having the show be a success. While I'm conscious, it's definitely in my subconscious that all plays out when I'm asleep. And I think it's just that little bit of thick skin that you've got to have as a business owner in any business, yarn related or not, to know that not everyone's your ideal customer, and that's okay. It's just your job to find your ideal customer and make sure that you treasure those people, and keep inviting them back in. So, yeah, there's always a little bit of, oh, is this going to work or not? But I think for the most part, we're pretty confident in what we do now.
Well, John sounds like an absolute sweetheart who is super supportive. Do you guys ever fight? Like, do you have different
Oh,
visions?
all the time. We fight all the time. My goodness. If you really love your partner, think very strongly about ever going into business with them. We it's definitely tough on us, especially because John's been in a lot of roles where he hasn't had um a very hands-on manager. So he's worked a lot of the time, his manager's been in a different state because Canberra is a small city, being a capital city. Um, we've only got about 400, 500,000 people, which fluctuates depending on government a little bit. And so a lot of businesses are headquartered in the capital cities. And so John, he's got one manager that he worked for 6 years. He never even met him face to face.
Yeah, it's very from having a manager in your house, right?
Yes, yeah. So he's gone from having absolutely no one hands-on telling him what to do or how to do it, to having me, sitting next to him all day, every day, saying, "Oh, hey, you forgot a full stop here in this email." So it's a big transition to go from that to what we have now as a married couple in business together. But I think the thing that keeps us going is, again, I'll bring up values a lot because I really believe businesses should be driven by values. Um, but it's our shared values around the business that we want to see the Australian Yarn Show put businesses on a stage to promote slow fashion and sustainability and to inspire the next generation of yarn crafters. And so we fight about it because we share that vision and we both want to bring it to life. And we're so passionate about it that it comes out in angry words at each other sometimes. Um, but I think if we didn't have those arguments, then one of us would be questioning, or one or the other of us would be questioning, are they as invested in this as I am? Because I feel so passionately about this. Why don't they? So they're sort of reassuring in a way. It is something that we've got to get a little bit better at for, the sustainability of our marriage. It takes a lot of emotional effort when you argue with your partner. But yeah, look, I know that I could have ended up with a different partner because it was, a very similar way to how we started the business. All these little things sort of fell into place. That's how John and I met. All these little things that happened that, you know, all just chance that we ended up together. And had we not, I could have been with someone who wasn't willing to sacrifice their career. John put his hand up and said, "Hey, look, I'm happy to quit my job and invest in working in our business and making this a reality." I could have had someone that was really career driven, and that would have brought up its own challenges and probably, you know, led to more issues in a marriage, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm really passionate about. Whereas John's been happy to put up his hand and say, let's just make this happen. Let's do what we need to do to bring, a new life, a new fresh breath into the yarn industry. Because he knows how passionate I am about it, and he's become passionate about it just by being around the industry. Um, and so, yeah, I'm very lucky to have him who's so willing to invest in our shared vision, not just a vision that he has for his life, but what we want to do for our family, for our business, for our industry, our community, and that's community nationally and globally as well. So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the community. It's one thing when you just knit by yourself at home. It's a whole other feeling when like all your friends are in this industry and all your friends are crafters of some sort, so some are artistic people, and like this is your life. How much, like, can you imagine life without all of that? How much did it change your life becoming the store owner and then yarn festival organizer?
I'm just going to take a quick drink of water and then answer. It's a very loaded question, that one actually. I so when I first met John, I had been diagnosed with Asperger's when I was 13, and I sort of ignored the diagnosis because at that time, firstly, girls just didn't seem to get diagnosed with Asperger's or autism. You know that we don't refer to it as that now. It's autism spectrum disorder, but um, yeah, that was my diagnosis back then. And I didn't want to pay any attention to it. It wasn't until I met John and could find someone that I could unmask and truly feel myself around that I was able to start to embrace that diagnosis and realize that it doesn't mean that there's anything necessarily wrong with me. I just operate a bit differently. Um, and then coming into the yarn industry, there are a lot of neurodivergent people who are attracted to yarn crafts. And as someone on the spectrum, to find my place with those people who are a little bit different to what people would consider normal, whatever that word means. And it to find a place where I can express myself freely. I can unmask and be my unique self. I don't have to feel so corporate and put together all the time. I can do corporate with a flair. Like, this is my favorite blazer that I've ever made. It's made with the eucalyptus and some sparkly glittery yarn. And being able to uh, take that mask off that I have been trained to wear and just be my authentic self is something that I can't thank the community for enough. I know not everyone who participates in yarn crafts is neurodivergent, but I think there is a strong neurodivergent presence in that community. And for the people who aren't neurodivergent, they're just accepting and warm and welcoming and supportive of people who, like me, identify as being on the spectrum. And it's transformative to be able to walk into that space and feel seen, and to be able to create a space like the yarn show where we can do that for so many other neurodivergent people is so rewarding. It's, yeah, getting a bit emotional talking about this.
Well, it's a warm community because it's such a squishy and warm material you're working with. It sort of makes sense.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to ask you a very difficult question. At least it's a very difficult question for me. Every time I'm going to the yarn festival, is what am I going to wear? How do you decide?
I was sitting in our industry workshop on Friday, knitting, trying my hardest to finish my top that I wanted to wear, and I didn't get it done, which was heartbreaking. But organizing a show apparently has to come first, and me knitting my wardrobe has to come second. So I'd actually planned to wear my blazers at the show, and then I got there, and because I was running around so much and I was on stage and under lights and mic'd up, it was way too hot to even think about wearing my blazers. So I have a loose plan. Luckily, I do a lot of knitting, so I have a lot of backup options for when things don't go to plan. Um, and I'm also the part of the reason that we have so many natural plant-based fibers in our yarn store is I'm someone that runs quite hot. So I tend not to wear that much wool. I've only been able to start wearing wool since I moved to Canberra. When I lived in Perth, where it's a bit warmer, I wouldn't even touch the stuff. It was just too hot for me. And John's the same. We'll walk around in short sleeves and shorts in the middle of winter in Canberra, and everyone's looking at us thinking they are true Canberrans. Um, but it's always hard to plan. I try and wear something that I've made out of a talking point for us. So I love the top I wore on the Saturday was made out of 100% sugarcane fiber. And so when people say, "Oh, I love your top, what's it made out of?" and I can tell them sugarcane, that always sparks the conversation because, oh my goodness, sugarcane, how do you do that? And then I can talk a little bit about the process of creating that kind of a fiber. So I love picking outfits that are going to spark a conversation. I love picking outfits that make me feel comfortable in my body as well, especially when you're at a show and you're running around and doing a lot of different things. You're not always wanting to be in something that you have to keep readjusting every 30 seconds or, trying to sort out. So comfort is a big thing for me. I love my fashionable sneakers because it means that I don't have to worry about heels all weekend. But yeah, I think funnily enough, the sugarcane top it's not a pattern. It's literally two rectangles sewn together. It was the very first pattern I ever knitted when I was young. When I was 5 or 6, I think I made my first top. And mum just said, knit two rectangles, I'll sew up the side seams, sew up the top seams, and you're done. And create this really boxy, fashionable look. And everyone stopped me at the yarn show. Oh my gosh, what's that pattern? I need to have it. I'm like, it's just two rectangles. That's all it is. Two rectangles with a yarn with beautiful drape. So sometimes I don't even focus too much on the pattern. I just try and find something that will really let the yarn shine. Because I think that for me is always really exciting. I still love doing my intricate patterns and especially some Australian-based designers, I think are incredibly talented. But yeah, for comfort, I love a slouchy top that will just let me run around and be a bit free all day.
Well, it sounds wonderful. I'm hoping one day I'm gonna get to see your festival because I saw like everything I saw on Instagram. I was like, oh my God, I wish I was there. It looks really fantastic, and there are some super talented people in Australia. So I'm hoping one day I'll find myself there.
You let us know if there's any plans for you to come, and we'll make sure that we organize something and yeah, make sure that you're set up to have a fantastic time at the festival.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being my guest today. It was really lovely to get to know you a little bit and like to hear about the background story of what goes into the organizing a festival like that.
Oh, it was wonderful to be on. Unfortunately, John's in the room with our son, woke up a little bit upset this morning. And it's, the realities of running a small business as a family is sometimes the kids just got to come first. But yeah, John really wished he could be here. And I hope I've done him justice talking about our passion for the yarn show. Um, but it was fantastic to be here with you. And hopefully next time John can join us too.
Thank you. It sounds great.
Can you say hi, Fiberchats?
That's pretty good.